feel like I need to do voice warm-ups because I just woke up, so my voice is still kind of like croaky.
By all means, do it. Go Sharpay and Ryan. Ma, ma,
Ma,
ma.
ma, ma, ma.
Amazing. Here we go. Here we are. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Maddi.
And this is.
Ambition Unpacked.
Heck yeah, it is. Here we are on this beautiful Saturday, Ambition Saturday, a true Ambition Saturday, Ambition Sunday for you.
Yeah. Ambition Saturdays for me is what it used to be, and now it's Ambition Sundays, which is fine.
So it's always been spiritually Ambition Saturday for you.
Yes, exactly.
Now it's Ambition Sunday because it's your religion. It's the Lord's Day.
Yes.
Ambition.
I do I want to say prayers, but I don't pray about it. I go to my ambition mass and read my ambition law.
Right. And you congregate with the congregation.
I listen to the hymns,
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't Charlie love that analogy?
He would.
So, here we are. We're discussing the third episode of the first season.
Under Pressure.
We are making our way.
Let's go.
If you remember last episode, I was very harsh because I really, really don't like the episode that came before this one. Whereas this one, I felt much better about. I was like, this is what ambition is supposed to feel like. This is really the much better start to, oh, this is kind of what the show is.
Yes. Yeah. I think you could tell that you had been able to work in your like goals, like not goals, but like you knew where this one was going more than the other one.
Yes. I think we get a better sense of like we're planting and embedding a lot of the long-term story arcs in this episode, whereas in 102 well, there wasn't really any long-term story arc being explored. So
yeah, it was mainly like it was setting up the characters a bit more. Yeah. It was, just sort of.
It was certainly there.
A little. Yeah.
Is what it was. So yes, I have my little stats for this episode. So the word count is actually surprisingly not much longer than 102. It's only 7,030 words. Also, I've realized I made a mistake last episode. I said that 102 was the shortest episode in the series. It is not. 105 is the shortest episode in the series.
Yeah. You know what? I did notice that at the time, and I was like, oh, maybe I just had it wrong in my head. I'm going to trust what Maggie says.
Don't trust me. Don't trust me, especially not about season 1. Don't trust anything I say. Unless I tell you to trust it. Then you can trust it. No, yeah. So this one it's like, I think the first half of the season, this is more kind of the average range of the episode lengths. It gets a little longer when you get to like 107. And then after that, when you get to like 109, 110, like that's when it starts getting up into the like, oh, we're reaching close to like 20K.
Wow.
And then after that, it's like, it all goes to hell. So
it's like a really big jump, honestly, around 7 to 20.
Yeah. And I think it's partially just because we talk so much more about everything. As you get deeper into these storylines, it's like you have to spend more time on these storylines. So True. That's a little difference there. But no, this is basically about the same length as 102. And its runtime in minutes, theoretical minutes, is 44, which is also what 102 was.
Nice.
It aired approximately, because as we said last time, I don't actually have the official date that this dropped for the first few episodes. But the approximate date is May 8th, 2019. So about 4 days after 102.
4 days.
And yeah, only 4. Just like 101 and 102, it's only about 4 to 5 days in between each episode. Which, conversely, it takes working on the special. It's a little different because I'm also working now. I have a full-time job, which is great. But while doing that, I have to kind of change like what's my writing pattern. And the special took about 3.5 weeks to write. So, big difference between that and 4 days.
Yeah.
But I guess if you do the math, it's like what? 7,000 times 4 times 5 would be 35, which is close to 39,000. And if you do 4 times 5, that's 20 days, which is about almost 3 weeks. So it's a little there's just more to write. So
quick math. Nice.
The math checks out. And then the page count in the document version of the show is this comes out to 15 pages, which I believe is only one page more than 102. So those are the quick stats.
Wow. These episodes are really so short, but this one manages to fit a lot in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think I have a couple notes about that this episode. I think the structure of it is just better. It has a clearer arc and it utilizes its time more effectively, I
Yes,
think.
definitely.
And we will get into that. So we're gonna get into it. So first we talk about the title. The title is Under Pressure
Mm-hmm.
for season 1, episode 3. To be honest, I don't have any opinions or thoughts to share about this title. It works. It does the job. I honestly don't even remember if Esther and I don't know who picked it.
Uh,
In the blur of the early half of the season, it's just kind of like, well, that's all there. These things exist. I think I did because I was just like, we need titles, and I just started throwing them out there.
yeah.
But this one it does what it needs to do. It gets the point across. It's not as fun as some of the later ones.
I think I feel like it has like a almost Glee notion about it. Like it's very simple. It's almost like if they were doing a Queen episode on Glee, then it would be called Under Pressure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I definitely think it was just like, yeah, there's a clear allusion to like, oh, like a very popular song. And like, okay, that's great. But it's not, we have to grease the wheels a little bit to start getting into like more creative or more fun
Yeah.
titles. This will get more interesting as time goes on because there's some ones in the later seasons that I have a lot to talk about with. So there it is. It's Under Pressure. The synopsis, let me pull it up here. Talent for brains. That's the tagline. Maya struggles to keep up with her academic requirements, but being given Farkle as a tutor is far worse. Charlie volunteers to tutor Zay. Riley fights to keep up after her introduction to a harsher feature of AAA.
Mm.
I think this is an improvement off the last one. It's less, this is exactly what's happening, a little more like, ooh,
Yeah.
touch of
It
intrigue.
doesn't just say exactly what the harsher feature is. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the harsher feature? Is it the competition? Is it the ambition? Is it this Instagram?
And I think too, I appreciate that this and just the episode as a whole. I think it's one reason I like it is that it focuses on something that does not really get focused on a lot in Ambition, admittedly, which is the academics of the school.
Mm,
Of like, you can't just be a dumbass and like not go to class and then continue to, do your art thing. So I think it's nice that that is right up front here. They mention it's like the academic requirements are going to be a big element of this. It's got, a couple of interesting duos included that maybe, back in the day at this point, we did maybe not
mm,
realize that these were going to be some interesting duos. But like, I like the fact that Charlie volunteers to tutor Zay is it's a simple statement. There's not a lot to unpack there. But if you know,
mm, you know,
quite a simple statement has a lot right underneath the surface.
definitely. There's a lot going on there that is not said. And it's actually just it's almost like a nice foreshadowing really early on that doesn't even come to fruition for a while. Just these kind of
Hmm.
pairings and friendships that start to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you have any questions about that or shall we dive in?
No, let's do it. Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's pump it.
No.
So yeah, so here we jump right in to the episode. We start with a song. I will say I enjoy when we kind of just jump right into a song. I like having opening and closing songs in episodes. I don't like to do it every episode because I think it's really good to have a variety and it doesn't feel like an overused structure.
Yeah.
But I do think it's fun when we get to do it. So this one for me was like, oh heck yeah, like let's go. We jump in right in.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a bop, and the fact that it's just like a really upbeat one, it really brings you this good feeling straight away.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, it's like you said it right. It's a bop, and I think it's like truly a classic bop. Like
Mm,
this is one of those songs that like I think people maybe don't think about, but like especially if you're our generation, it's like you hear this, you're like, oh, it's Pump It.
hmm
Like we know this song, everybody knows it. But I do like that while it's fun and upbeat, it is a little bit, we've talked the last couple episodes about that tension. It's kind of a tense song too. Like
Mm,
there's no room to slack here. And we get that
no.
right from the beginning. And I wanted to say that one thing that I really like about that is this to me is actually one of my like kind of low key favorite performances.
Ooh.
I think it often gets forgotten because of the fact that it's not really a performance. Like, it's not like, Zay and Maya are singing Pump It. It's just like they're working, they're doing like rehearsal
Yeah.
and working out and doing warm ups. But one thing that I really like about it, and I think one reason it always stands out to me, aside from the fact that it's a bop, is that I like the fact that Charlie is noted front and center with Maya and Zay.
Yeah.
That it is like the first time that we're really featuring him in a performance capacity, and it's showing like it's not overstated, but the fact that like he is there and he is with them, it's like right from the get-go he is on their level when it comes to dance,
Yes.
even though it's never kind of harped on and they don't bring it up again. But we're showing that, and then it's kind of this interesting irony that like we see that so early on, but then Charlie consistently and everybody else consistently is like he's never included as like a really good performer. He's never thought of as like a competitive
Yeah.
character, even for himself. And I think it's just cool to see like no, like he can keep up. Like if he knows if it's his thing, he's there.
Definitely. I just have to say, like, this song reminds me of like a Zumba class I used to take. We used to dance to this song, and it was really fast. So I can imagine, yeah, like I imagine Maya, Zay, and Charlie doing that, and it looks really cool. But what do you
Yeah.
imagine that they're doing?
For me, it's like I wish I had better vocabulary for like dancing. I did do dance for, I will say, for a long time. In my youth, I think I was in some form of dance class from about 5 years old to probably 10 years old. And then I was in musical theater. So, like, I was, I had tap dance and stuff like that much later. But I was in like different versions of dance for a lot of my elementary school life.
Hmm.
But I did have a foundation for dance at kind of a an intermediate level there, and so it's like I can picture choreography a lot, and I can picture what it would look like, and I can kind of run through it at times, and I do that a lot for a lot of performances actually.
Hmm.
It's just that when I try to articulate it, I'm like they are doing this thing and blah blah blah. So kind of like I think you can see, especially later in the episodes when the performances start to get a little more just descriptive, you can kind of see like there are times where I can really kind of outline the step by step
Hmm.
or like little moments that I think are clear. But for the most part, I'm like, I wish I could just we say S and I say this all the time, but like I wish we could just had like plug you guys into our brain like with a USB
Mm,
and you could just see the way we see it in our heads.
yeah.
That would be so convenient. But this performance, I think it's just a lot of like maybe I'll try to find like a link or something to like a music video that I think kind of would fit the
Yeah, yeah,
vibe.
or one of those like dance, there's those kind of dance school performances. They have a lot of those on YouTube.
Right. Yeah. I'll take a look. And we can then put it on our new Ambition Unpacked webpage that I'm still working on and it is not aired yet, but we will let everybody know when it is ready to be poked around on.
Yeah,
But that would be a cool thing to include there for this episode. So
definitely.
I will look for that. Don't let me forget to look for that. But yeah, I think definitely just very high energy, lots of kind of I don't want to say like jumping,
Hmm.
but like just a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Like it's very fast, it's very on the beat, it's very and there is something that I had written. I don't know if I ever posted this. I read a lot of like things for pairings and stuff like that, just little snippets and drabbles and stuff for my own efforts. And there was some time where I described the fact that Zay and Charlie are kind of very aware of the fact that they are both always on the beat and they're always again it's that thing of they can keep up with each other.
Oh,
And I think that that
snazzy.
is this moment here is like that's a good example of that. I think we're like yeah they are not at all like he's Charlie's like in Zay's periphery at this point. They're not
Hmm.
they don't have a relationship, but I think Zay would still be aware of the fact that like when they're hitting the beat, if they're hitting the downbeat on something, the only person most of the time that is actually on it with him is Charlie. And Maya might be like there
Mm,
sometimes, she might be like a couple seconds behind, like and everybody else is a mess, but like they are both like, no, we're on it, we know the beat, we know the dance,
hmm.
we know the choreography. Like that's what you get
Yeah.
from this performance.
Yeah, I mean, that is so, I love that. I definitely think there's different elements to dance because I did it for like probably since I did it from when I was like 3 to when I was like 20.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember there was always people in classes who were really good at counting. Like my friend who was really good at maths, she was always on the beat, but
Mm-hmm.
I always thought she had like a bit of a rigid, like she didn't have the like grace and like style
Yeah.
necessarily. Whereas I always felt like I could not keep on the beat, but I could do like a bit more style.
Mm-hmm.
Not the best, but like a bit more. And yeah, the good dancers were the people who could combine that
Yes.
into, yeah, making it like really capture the music as well. So
Yeah.
that's what I imagine them doing. And I imagine Maya being like very stylish, but maybe not exactly on the beat.
Yeah, totally. That makes complete sense. And I think too, yeah, Maya, I think she's definitely one of the ones that I kind of imagine as like the choreography is suggested choreography. If I want to add my own little flair, like I can do that. So yeah, we've got definitely I think while this is an A-class performance and we get that kind of boom boom warm up vibe, um it's really Maya, Zay, and Charlie's performance to a degree because they are more the focus. And then you go back a layer and we see everybody else. And this is where we see that Riley is really struggling to keep up,
Mm,
which is completely understandable because she's been there for, what, 2 months? And, it even says she just does not have the training and the
hmm.
sole focus and ambition of the other people that have been here for a whole year already. So it totally makes sense that she's not going to be at their level. But I think it's, I
Yeah.
just think it's funny that like we take care to mention like even Farkle is doing better than her, and I just think that's so funny and mean to Farkle. But
Or Farkle.
like it's just I
But
think to
yeah.
imagine if you're thinking about like oh how cool do Maya, Zay, and Charlie look at this kind of dance? It just like does not match Farkle Makers. Like you can't see
Mm-mm.
him doing that same kind of like cool, slightly freestyle kind of hip hop. Like it doesn't
No,
work.
it doesn't.
Like I've always imagined that he is quite good at tap dancing and he's quite good at like jazzy kind of, musical theater type stuff. But like
Hmm.
this is like no, Farkle should stay in his lane and not dance like this.
Yeah, I imagine he's someone who he knows the timing, but he can't get his body to move fast enough to
Yeah.
do that
Yeah.
because he's too like noodly.
Yeah, no, exactly. Especially right now when he's still
Mm.
what 14 and is not really grown into
Oh
his
yeah.
his limbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Yeah. So then I think another interesting thing about this performance as it's ongoing, but it's not really about the performance, is the fact that we're getting a sense that like the techies are really kind of underutilized at the same time that they're
Hmm.
overworked. Like we don't get the overworked piece of it yet, but they're basically being neglected in class right now because they're not doing the dance. And so they're like, what are we supposed to I guess we're just gonna sit here and do nothing and play cards and do our homework. Which on the one hand, that's kind of nice. But I think like it kind of goes to show that like with the kind of lack of
Mm.
academic leadership that Sean has as their teacher, where he's not planning activities for them because he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. So you have him, and then Angela's just she doesn't care about them, so she's not giving them stuff to do or even inviting them to come dance. Not that I think they would, but they're just completely adrift in their own thing.
Yeah, but if she had asked Jeff and I bet like Nate, they totally could have kept up.
Oh, Nate, Nate would be like twerk time, like let's go.
Yeah.
And Jeff would have. I think we would have learned 2 seasons earlier that Jeff could keep up.
Yeah. Alas, no. Yeah, because there's actually so many things for techies to do. Like, they have to test the lights, they have to test the sound.
Hmm.
They could be practicing lighting configurations, or, they could be working on other technical features.
Right.
But no one is telling them to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them for just sitting there.
And also
And
like,
also just
yeah. Go ahead.
doing their homework in terms of like Lucas doing his homework, like good for him,
King. That's what it's all about. But yeah,
getting it
I
done.
mean, I think too, like you said, if there would be so much more for them to do if it was more of a cohesive class, but the fact that they're so
Mm,
separate, they're like, we're the performers and we're the techies, is like the performers are getting everything. It's like they don't even consider
hmm.
what could we be doing for the techies at this point.
So sad.
I think there's also a little interesting, as this is starting to come to an end here, I think it's interesting that we get a kind of pretty telling character moment for both Darby and Sarah in the way that they
Mm.
react to Riley starting to mess up. Is
Oh.
Darby, like, she gets bumped into, but she tries to, like, help Riley and is like, oh, it's okay, like, just go here. But it's already, like, spiraling out of control. Whereas Sarah
Mm.
just, like, bumps her back and is like, fuck you, basically. And I think that this is what speaking of like the difference between 102 and 103, like I think this is one of those good examples of this is a great showing not telling moment of characterization where it's not me being
Yeah.
like she bumps into Darby, and since Darby's a nice person, she helps her back up, right? Like, it's just, you just see them do these things, and it tells you a
Hmm.
little bit about who they are.
Yes, and speaking of that, like the fact that in the techies, like the fact that Issa and Lucas are doing their homework is showing how they're not going to be in academic trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. And I think you see with, I mean, it's kind of funny, like Nate and Dylan playing cards is like, okay, totally, absolutely.
yeah,
And you might be thinking, like, well, why is Asher playing cards? Because you'd think he'd be doing his homework. But I
yeah,
think that at this point, we haven't talked a ton about this in on the interwebs or in the kind of backstory lore, but we have talked about it in our group chat that the fact that season one, sophomore year, like Dylan and Asher are very much in their like honeymoon phase, and they
mm,
do everything together, and they're always together, and they're kind of like morphing into each other a
yeah,
little bit. They're at that phase of their relationship. Whereas in season two and season three, they've gotten off that and are a little more like, we're very committed to each other, but we have our own personalities and we have our own friend groups, and we, do this and that and
mm,
the other. So I think it does make sense for Asher to be playing cards here, because it's that kind of thing of like, oh, Dylan's playing cards, I want to play cards with Dylan. Like
yeah,
he's very much in his like his simp phase a little
yeah.
bit.
And like one of I mean, part of his brain is probably like, oh, I could be doing my homework, but the bigger part is like, well, I'm hanging out with Dylan and that's it.
He's like, I'm hanging out with Dylan, and I guess I'm hanging out with Nate.
Nate's there.
Yeah, and speaking of another kind of just characterization moment, we have when Riley falls, both Zay and Charlie immediately stop what they're doing and go to help her, which I think
So
is,
sweet.
it doesn't say Maya stops what she's doing and goes to help her. Maya does not give a
Mm,
shit. But the fact that both of them are like, oh no, and like go to help immediately, I think is very telling for both of them.
definitely. It's another great sign of how in sync they are. We love to see it.
Mm-hmm. And then, it's hilarious. Riley is so funny. She's like, oh, Zay's helping me. Okay. And then Charlie's like, I can help you. And she's like, don't touch me. I'm not going to take your hand. I can't. Sorry.
That is insinuating too much, Mr. Charlie.
And Charlie's like, it's okay. I wouldn't take my hand either. So,
He's like,
God.
yeah, that tracks. Cool.
Yeah. So then, we've had this performance. It's over. It's done. Super fun. Super good kickoff. Angela tells everybody, like, we're doing great. It's okay. This is a natural part of the rehearsal process. I thought here, when she kind of gives that reassurance, Farkle scoffs and takes a little sassy drink of his water.
Ugh.
I'm like, Farkle, you're a bitch. You gotta love it, but you gotta hate it too.
Like, Farkle, you are not doing that much better.
I know, literally.
So, like, you're not scoffing. You're not allowed to scoff right now.
He's ridiculous. So then Angela tries to talk to Riley, which I think is nice, that she's like, hey, it's okay. Like, you don't have to be the best dancer in the class. You need a little more time. You got here later. But Riley's like, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm good. It's all good. And
Poor
Angela's like,
Riley.
okay.
She's definitely getting some anxiety about not being good enough right there because of Topanga instilling that in her from a young age. And now, if I was her in this situation, I would be having a full-on freak out. But she
Yeah.
just goes into that dressing room and she just goes, ha ha ha. I don't see how it's that funny, which is just great. Good for you, Riley.
Yeah.
Tell him.
She tried to stick up for herself there, and then she realized, oh, it's worse than I thought it was.
Wah wah.
Because it's not only that she fell, but her fall has become posted on the dun dun dun
Oh,
AAA Confessions page on Instagram. And this is the
what?
big official introduction of this very big entity that exists this season, where people can send things anonymously about their classmates and just be petty and rude with no consequences. This creation of this element, I think, is a little interesting to talk about, because when we first were starting the idea for the show, this was not something that we were thinking about. It really kind of came to be when we were starting to really outline season one more in depth, and we were like, we need a long-term plot line. Like, we need something that's going to thread all of these developments of
Mm,
relationships and characters together, and that became the AAA Confessions mystery.
right.
But with that, it was kind of like, I mentioned this idea, and I thought, like, it can be a great way we can weave in, as we'll see, it fits so many different storylines as well. It kind of
Mhm.
brings in like everybody's It's that Charlie
Yeah.
said in episode 2, everybody's got something to hide. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
almost
it
like you were hinting to it then as well.
Right. And it plays into that, but it's funny because when we were talking about it, Esther was like, is this realistic? Like, we didn't have anything like this. And I was like, oh, honey, in
Hmm.
America, every high school has something like this. Like, it is so, I'm sure it's even worse now because this was when I was in high school and like
Hmm.
Instagram was still relatively new. It
Yeah.
wasn't super popular. Like Facebook was still the place to be, which it is definitely not anymore. So like I remember like my junior and senior year on our high school, we had like a Twitter page for this. And I was just minding my own business. Like it was usually just the popular people that were doing this shit
Yeah.
about other popular people. But here at a school like this, where it's so competitive and so small, it's like totally easy to imagine that like everybody would be plugged in.
Ugh, I don't think my
So
school had anything like this. I know that after I left, there was definitely like meme Instagrams, but I don't know if they were necessarily like, I don't know if they were confessions sort of gossip things. But yeah, not
that's
when I
good.
was there. Yeah, thankfully.
I feel like it is honestly very much a American culture thing, which is really unfortunate. But I feel like
Mm,
Esther being in the UK, like she was surprised that this is a thing. But now it's like I mean, honestly, even before like Gossip Girl and the Gossip Girl reboot, like
mm,
that's all high school and that's all American high school and it's the same kind of concept, of
mm,
like let me send anonymous shit about my classmates.
yeah. Ugh, often unflattering stuff. So rude.
Yes. So I wanted to. This episode is going to kind of start this little theme that I think you and I are going to have to go through as we go through this season,
Mm-hmm.
which is every time a post shows up, there's the question of who took that post and submitted it
Mm,
to the confessions page. And that often does not get talked about in the show. And to be candid, I don't know half the time who sent it. We just needed it to conveniently be there. But I thought we could unpack for each one, like, well, who do we think sent that? Why do we think it got put on there? So,
yeah.
yeah, that's kind of our little Maggie and Maddi Nancy Drew mystery of the season.
Okay.
So, this first one, Riley's tumble during rehearsal, where they're like, why
Mm.
is she still here? She can't keep up. First of all, the question is who took that photo because they're all dancing, you know?
Yeah, it makes me think it has to be a techie,
Yeah.
which is
I
kind
was
of
wondering about that
sad,
too.
but I guess they're not in the best of moods and the best of friends with Riley at this point. So I was thinking, yeah, I mean, it could have been Nate, it could have been,
Yeah, I think the
yeah.
only person that, because it says later in this episode that a lot of the Trekkies do not follow the page. So I think that it could be, yeah, logically, it's like it has to be like some of the, one of the Trekkies if they're the ones that aren't dancing. I
Hmm.
feel like in terms of personality, Nate is the obvious answer to me
Yeah.
because of the fact that like he just is a shit stirrer and
Mm-hmm.
he loves to like be cheeky.
Yeah.
I think, especially, yeah, because they don't know Riley. They're not attached to her at this point. So they're like, whatever, a performer fell. But what I think is more realistic is that he probably took the video or GIF or picture, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and he probably just sent it to AAC and was like, hey, I don't have anything to say about this, but here you go. Like, if you want
Mm,
to
yeah.
post
Yeah.
this, go ahead, just for the laughs, for the lulz. And
Definitely.
then to me, it was like, okay, Chai probably posted the caption.
Yeah, like Nate doesn't really have the like sassy, like cunning to think of a caption that is, yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think it was probably Nate who took it and then Chai posted the caption. But I wanted to point out in terms of, the long-term mystery of who is running the page,
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to, as we get through the season, so I guess spoilers for season one, but hopefully everybody's already read season one. It becomes this mystery of who is running this page, and it kind of comes down to these suspects of like Farkle becomes a main suspect, and he kind of is throughout the
Mm-hmm.
first season. And
Mm.
we wanted to plant some little things throughout that could be like, oh, if you really wanted to go dig and go see if you could figure it out. An interesting red herring here is that the caption talks about like, it's almost the end of first semester, she still hasn't caught up. What is she doing here? And in the next episode, in episode 4,
Mm-hmm.
when they're talking about the winter showcase, and Riley's like, what's that? I don't know what that is. Farkle says almost the exact same thing. He says, like, haven't you been here for months now? Shouldn't you be caught up? And so
Mm.
it's like a little bit of like, huh, that's interesting. A
Yeah,
little bit of a diversion
love
there.
that. A little bit of a hint. I mean, it's like back in like Pretty Little Liars days when you'd be like, this person is A because of this, even though that show made no sense. So you could never actually figure it out.
Yeah. So then we have our title sequence, and then we go into, as you talked about, you said I would have broken down already.
Yes.
Well, Riley is now breaking down. She's doing it alone in a bathroom stall. And she's not giving up, but she's like, I need to get this part out. I need to cry. I need to be done with it so that I can like move on. I wanted to say kind of this interesting thing about Riley and crying is that I
Mm.
don't think she has, this is something that our me and our beta div have talked about a lot in terms of her character, is I don't think that she has an issue with crying. I don't think she has like a weird hang up about it or anything. She doesn't have a toxic masculinity like
Mm.
I can't cry thing. But I think that she's very, very particular and weird about like if other people are around when she's crying. She feels very like I can't cry around other people. And you see that a little bit in the season 1 finale when everything's going to shit and you have like everybody's crying because the page has been like blown up and Farkle's crying and like people are yelling and we see her cry but it's one tear. Like she lets one slip but
Mm.
otherwise she's trying not to cry in front of everybody else. And I think
Yeah.
that that is the reason I think that she is that way is again because of Corey and Topanga. Like I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
when that started to get weird and she was like, I know something's wrong, I know something's wrong. She didn't want to cry in front of them, so she got very like protective about. She's like, I can cry, but on my own time. And I think
Yeah.
she's very much like that throughout the series.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine like growing up with Topanga would be quite a why are you crying? Like you can fix this, you can figure it out, like stop crying, kind of don't
Mm-hmm.
show your weakness kind of environment. So
Yeah.
she learned to hide that, which
Yes.
is unfortunate. I'm glad she is crying. I'm glad she's getting that out, even if it is in secret.
Yes, like I think she has a healthier relationship than maybe some of the other characters do with the process of crying, but she still is very she has these hang ups about it. And one thing I also think is interesting about that is who else has a hang up about crying around people because of their parents?
Mm,
Lucas.
interesting.
It's shown in Cruel Summer that he has that spot in his closet, even though his room is like already a closet. He has a spot in the closet where he goes if he to him I don't think he thinks of it as crying, it's just kind of like losing his fucking shit. If he's gonna like do that, he goes in that space where he's hidden and muffled because of the fact that he's like, I cannot cry if my dad is going to be able to hear me. So he has that kind of like also like I have to if he's crying in front of someone else, like shit is messed up. Like it's hit a point where it's that bad. And we see that
Mm,
unfortunately a couple
so
times in the
sad.
show.
So, so sad.
But yes, yet another upbringing existence parallel between Riley and Lucas. Then Riley is not alone in the bathroom. She has a intruder into her crying space, so she tries to pull it together really fast.
Intruder.
This intruder, though, is not wearing nice, beautiful shoes. She's wearing ratty sneakers because it's Isadora.
Boop, boop.
And then
Mm,
we have this really surprisingly nice moment between Isadora and Riley.
it's beautiful.
I think it's just very interesting that this episode kind of does have a couple moments there of like an unexpected, like we kind of think from 101 and 102 that we don't, these the techies especially are kind of like not mean but they have a very gruff like kind
Cynical.
of unfriendly exterior so to have this moment of because you would expect Zay to do this if he knew Riley was crying he'd
Mm-hmm.
come be like, hey, it's okay. Maybe Darby, we've seen that she's nice. People that we've established are nice to Riley. Sure, we could believe they do this, but I think it's more impactful because it's coming from someone who was like, oh, well, that was really nice.
Surprising. She gives niceness and then she walks away. Goodbye.
Yes. She hands her a paper towel. She says, the people here suck. And then she's gone. I think that's an interesting line, too, this idea of the people here suck, because a theme later in the show becomes so much that the best thing about AAA is the people. So
Mm.
again, it's that whole thing of like your perception in the moment can be so wrong and just so impacted by circumstances because later on, by the time we get to season 3, all of them are like, yeah, people are annoying, but these are my people.
Mm.
And they are the thing that makes this place as good as it is. Clearly not the case right now.
No. No, they all need to work out some issues first.
A lot of issues. So then we get into the meat of the episode, which is that Corey is meeting with Angela and Sean to discuss the fact that there are some students who are in danger of failing their core curriculum classes. So this is your English, your math, your science, your history. As Corey's responsibility as one of the academic teachers to tell them that and be like, if we don't fix this problem, then they are going to be at risk of being barred from creative activities, being put on probation, like, you know, if they're scholarship kids, like, we got to deal with this problem. And he tells them that the 5 students in the sophomore A class that are in risk of being in trouble for their grades is Dave Williams, Dylan Orlando, Haley Fisher, Zay Babineau, and Maya Hart.
Ooh.
A couple of those maybe not very surprising, but
No, but I think the bigger thing is that like Zay and Maya were just listed as being like front and center performers, and it's very clear that they are putting that first.
Yes,
Also, like
absolutely.
Charlie wins because he is doing both. So
He's like, get on my level, but please don't get on my level.
please
Don't look at
do
me.
not, and also don't have a mum like me because that's how you
Yeah,
get on this
well,
level.
yeah, too true on that front. So yeah, I mean, Maya's a top performer, and Angela freaks out about that because she's like, I need her for creative stuff. And Sean rightfully is like, why don't you let someone else show off for a change? But Angela's not gonna do that right now. Basically, Corey's like, it's all they need to do is pass their next round of exams. They just need to, you know, do a little more academic work, you know? It's fine.
Hmm.
They'll be okay. But it maybe won't be that easy because they don't want to do it. So, as we see with Maya in her apartment scene, she is not doing her homework. She's focused on other things, being distracted, not interested in academia. And you know, that's valid, but someone's got to do it. So,
You have to do it to stay in school, unfortunately. You don't get to pass high school just doing performing.
which is like, and it's funny too, because like at this point, it's like, that is basically what they're doing at this damn school. And she still is like, no, I don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't want to do this. I like this scene and its inclusion because, again, I think another example of like this is a good way to show and something about a character is we kind of just get from the introduction of Katie here. We've already seen her a couple times, but we're actually getting more of bits of her character, and we see how different Maya is with her mom than
Mm,
she is at school. She's very helpful. She, you know, she didn't help Riley when she fell, but the moment her mom comes in carrying groceries, she's up, she's helping unload them. I think it just goes to show that she's so different
hmm.
with her, and that maybe what we see at school is not fully who she is.
Yes, it's adding this depth and it's I think it shows her priorities in that she wants to help her mum, and so part of that is excelling at school to become famous, and that is like
Mm-hmm.
part of her long-term plan to help her mum, and then her short-term plan is helping her mum with the groceries.
Right. Exactly. And we get a kind of similar introduction to some more family dynamics here when we meet the Babineaus. We meet Donna and Omar. And
Icon.
I will talk super briefly about because we talked about casting as we went along, and this is our
Mm,
first kind of true introduction to them. Theirs was like pretty simple. I mean, to be honest, it was the kind of thing of like, okay, we need African American actors, obviously, because Zay is African American, he's black. And so it was like, okay, well, let's look at, again, I go to IMDb, I live by IMDb, I go to IMDb
mhm,
list. I was like, you know, black actors in their 40s and their 50s, and I would scroll that list, and we were looking for the parents. Oftentimes we're looking for people who are like kind of well known, where it's like, oh, you'd recognize that person, like I've
mhm.
seen them in this, or but they're not like, you know, it's not like we're gonna get I'm trying to think of like a like Denzel
Yeah,
Washington to come
yeah,
play Zay Babineau's dad. Like it needed to be people who would be willing to kind of do this, like, yeah, I'll do a spot on this
yeah,
show, especially for people who like maybe have a history of like doing teen shows in the
mhm,
past, or kind of like the way they, not to bring up Riverdale, but the way they kind of did with casting the parents on Riverdale in the
mhm.
first season, of like these were people who were in really big culty movies in the 80s, and now they're kind of playing the parents in this culty TV show, so it's a little bit like that vibe.
Yeah, and that's really cool.
I think there's other parents that are a little more like on that level and that are more like very clearly like this is a tiny bit of a stunt casting, but
Yeah.
not completely.
I think it's nice to have a combination of that.
So yeah, that's kind of we picked them, we looked at the lists, we tried to think about, okay, if this person looks right, do we think they look like they could be Amir Mitchell Tom's parents? And then it was like, okay, what's stuff that they've done in the past? And I knew Tasha Tyler who plays Donna, she had been on Friends, like a million billion years
Oh,
ago
yeah.
in one of the later seasons. So I knew her from that, but she also, I mean, she's a working actress. Like she does a ton of stuff. So I was like, she could very easily pull this off. So with this scene, I really like it because I think it's very brief, but it really establishes their dynamic so easily, which is that I think you see totally like where Zay gets his personality because, and they joke about this in later episodes as well about like, Donna is the hard hitter. She's ambitious, she's determined, she's not an artist, but she's like, I do what I do and I'm good at it and I work
Hmm.
hard and you're gonna work hard because life does not go easy on us and I
Yeah.
believe in you, but you gotta do it. And Zay's like, yeah, I know I gotta do it. And then we know Zay is also very ambitious and kind of a hard ass and like does not give himself breaks. But then on the flip side, you have Omar, who is much more like laid back and like everything's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna let her ramble, and I agree with her, but also like it's gonna be okay. Like just
Mm.
chill. And I think that that's kind of Zay's other side of his personality is coming off as that very cool, like laid back, like it's all good thing. And I think we especially see a little bit of that how he is with Charlie in their relationship, where he's the one that has to be like, okay, relax. You're crazy. So, yeah, I just really like this scene because I think it really showcases all of that in just a few lines. So,
I love that. I love these little insights we get into their family life because somehow, I don't know, like they're quite short scenes, I suppose, but they just give you that little bit.
that's what I go for. That's what you want in like a
Mm.
good, nice
Mhm.
paced episode. Back at school, we go into the fact that Corey is telling everybody in class that he's going to be hosting academic boot camp. And everyone's invited if they want to come. But you know who you are if you think you really should come. But we won't say who it is. But you're invited. And it's kind of this weird, like, public shaming, but not because no one knows who the people are. But I think that this was Corey's mistake, is because he did this publicly, and that alerted everybody to the fact that this boot camp was going to happen. And
Mhm.
since there were people that had to show up, or were very heavily implied that they should show up, like whoever submitted that post knew where to look because it was like he came and told everybody, like,
Mhm.
come to academic boot camp.
Yeah, and no one is gonna go who
Unless
yeah,
they have
unless they
to
have
or
to go.
because
Yeah,
they're looking for some tea. So,
exactly.
a mess. This just goes to show again, it's like that thing of I was joking with people in our group chat about how when I usually Esther is the one that does stuff on Instagram in terms of like posting cool story stuff or like if we're sharing casting stuff, like that's all Esther. And I usually do more of the posts
Mhm.
because again, that was like my era of Instagram was to make a post. But so like I was trying to figure out something for promoing for the season 4 special, and I like could not get this damn story to work, and I was like, I am gonna have a mental breakdown. I don't understand how to do this. And to me, I'm like, that's why I'm like, I give a little bit of benefit of the doubt and like credence to Jack and Eric and Corey, who are all struggling with this weird Instagram thing that they're like, we need to solve this, but we don't know how. It is understandable that they don't understand it because like I don't even understand it and I was still technically of the Instagram era. So I think they deserve a little bit of credit for the fact that they're at least trying.
I mean, I know plenty of older people who manage to use Instagram to, like, some degree, but, I will give them that benefit of the doubt for you.
Thank you so much. Have mercy. No, but yeah, I mean, I think that's why it makes sense. Like in Corey's day, sure, maybe if someone wanted to start shit, maybe they'd come and look and see who's in the room and then tell two or three other people and like slowly it would spread. Whereas
Mm.
now in this era, it's like someone takes a photo and they post it,
Mhm.
bam, everyone sees it. And I
Yeah.
think that their generation is not equipped to be thinking about that.
We're just too quick, too sneaky.
Too fast, too fast. Then there's a scene that Sean and Eric are talking about this academic situation. I actually really like this scene because I like that, first of all, it shows the dynamic between Sean and Eric, which is
Mm.
fun. It gives them
Mhm.
a little bit of an individual dynamic. But I also like that, I just think that dialogue in this scene is very fun and like kind of realistic about the way that these, like, when they're not around the kids, like, these are the way that these men are talking to each
Mhm.
other, just being very, like shooting the breeze, casual. Sean seems like not angry, which is like nice to have Sean be like at a normal mood. I think it's a little bit funny that Eric does seem so surprised by this rule as if he doesn't know that this would happen to her. Like Sean has to tell her like no, like she'll
Yeah.
have to like leave. I think it's funny, but I also think if we're building on the Jarek lore that we've been discussing for the last couple episodes, I think that it may be a reason that it does surprise him is because presumably before Jack, maybe that there were other principals that just didn't follow that rule or just ignored it.
Hmm.
And so Jack, I think, is the first principal where it seems like, oh, he might actually follow that rule. He might actually kick someone out because they're not doing well academically. Whereas maybe in the past it was just like,
Mm.
it's a rule, but wink, wink, it's okay.
Yeah, Sean knows his brother, and Sean
Yeah.
knows those people are gone. And
Yeah.
Eric's
He
like,
said,
oh,
don't
it's
get all
fine.
pissy with me. Take it up with my brother. And Eric said, don't think I won't.
And they have a lovely chat. I love that that's how it ends. It's very fun and sassy.
Yeah. Everybody's, walking out angry, storming out of rooms to go
So
yell at
tense
people.
all the time.
Ambition, it's tension. So then we have the actual academic boot camp, and Corey is pleasantly surprised that everybody shows up that is supposed to show up. There's kind of this interesting beat of Maya and Zay realizing
Yeah,
that they're both there, and I think that that's like a very interesting, cool, like unspoken moment of like this tacit exchange of like, oh, you're here? Huh.
interesting. Yeah, they kind of because they're always competing, so I guess in some ways they know that they're better at dancing than Farkle, so they maybe felt like they had an up on him, but now that they know
Yeah.
that he is actually really good at school and they're both
Yeah.
clearly not, then
I mean, I think they definitely like Farkle is that bitch where like he's good at school because he's so
yeah.
damn annoying. But like I think so they knew that he was like the really really smart one, but they probably also were like I have to keep my academic struggles to myself because I
Mm,
can't show that weakness
yeah.
that I might have for different reasons. Like as we'll see with Zay, like his is due to a learning disability
Hmm.
and disinterest, but more the learning disability. Whereas Maya is the one where it's just like I'm lazy and don't care about this. I know what I
Yeah.
want to do,
Yeah.
and but I think they both held that close to the vest. And so now it's like they're both realizing like, oh shit, like it's you too. It's a little bit of the Spider-Man meme.
That's so good. I mean, it's nice for them. I'm glad that they're not, the only one. Like they both kind
Yeah.
of probably would have spiraled a bit more about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting too if you think about this environment that they live in with the confessions page, like it's almost like it's a protective move too because they both
Mm.
see each other. They're like, "Well, she's not going to tell that I'm here
Mm.
because then I could tell that she was here." Like I think they both are having that moment of like, "Oh, I can use this. Okay, we're both safe because we're not going to rat each other out."
That is great. Speaking of, they just completely like calls out Lucas as like, well,
Yeah.
why is this guy not here? Which is so mean. They're so rude about him.
Yes. That is I was going to bring that up because that's one of my favorite lines in the episode is this exchange where Zay is like, "Well, we can't start cuz Lucas isn't here." And they all assume that like of course he has bad grades cuz he's a
Troublemaker.
jackass, troublemaker. And so he's like, "Is he really bold enough to skip out on academic boot camp?" And Sean goes, "Actually, Lucas has excellent grades." Like, yes, he
Boom,
does.
snap.
Drop the mic. King
Like,
has A++ on his report card and then D- on disciplinary behavior, but
yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he would have been able to stay in the school this long if he had been underperforming in every area. Like the fact that he
Right,
has
if he was
excellent grades,
also failing.
yeah, it's like a big point to keep him in the school because they like to purport that they have a good academic program. So having another student who does put effort with their academic work is probably not the worst thing in the world. They're like, okay, he's got another
Exactly.
chance because look at all these people, they're not trying. And
Right.
he's not really trying with anything else, but at least he has this.
At least he's decent enough at his academics. And I think too, like, that does become a point later for a lot of different things. Like for his
Definitely.
transfer, potential transfer, it's relevant for the college stuff in season 3 that it's like I think it's so interesting again it's coming back to that same theme in season 1 of your perception of someone does not mean that that's the truth
Mm.
because everybody assumes that he's a bad student because he's a bad behavioral case I guess but he's not like he is just as equally
Yeah,
academic at least as Asher or Charlie. He's not as
yeah.
nerdy as them but he is capable academically.
Yeah, he doesn't take as much joy in it, but he can do it. And it's very evident in everything he does because the way he talks, even in like the first episode,
Yeah.
he talks. I always say this to you, but he talks so eloquently.
Hmm.
I think it's quite clear that he is very smart.
Now we are getting into the second performance, which is between Jack and Eric. It's a rare teacher
Mm,
performance. I wanted to say so Eric comes and he is like, Jack, how could you do this? How could you almost kick my out when you know she can't pay on her own? Let me say first, I just want to point out that I do think Eric has a little bit of a point just in the fact that he could at any moment be like, why is Lucas here? When you let him break a million rules and
mm-hmm,
you don't threaten to kick him out because you know that he has extenuating circumstances.
mm-hmm.
He didn't use that card here.
Yeah,
He could have, I think, and gotten away with
it's
it.
implied. Yeah.
Yes. So then Jack's like, academics are important. We can't just be like singing every day and that's it. But I highlighted his line that he has when Eric comes in and is like, how could you be so heartless? Jack
Mm-hmm.
says, oh, how I love when you barge into my workspace without warning. Hello, Eric. How are you this afternoon? Could I get you anything? Any water? Perhaps a coffee before you gesticulate all over my office? And I just am like, their little sassiness.
It's not flirty. I was gonna say it's flirty, but it's not. It's actually quite antagonistic, and
Yes.
it is amazing to see how far they come.
Yes. They have a, it's, I think what you mean by not necessarily flirty, but there's like a familiarity. Like it's like
Mm,
they are so familiar with each other's bullshit. And I
yes.
think there's a really interesting kind of parallel there between the way that they are with each other and the way that Maya and
Mm.
Farkle are with each other, where they're like, I
Ooh.
hate you, you're my enemy, I loathe you. But then the moment Maya's threatened to be taken away, Farkle's like, wait. I don't, wait. Don't
No.
let her go. No. So I think it's that kind of, they both have that going on.
Oh.
So yeah.
Yeah, they're people who need to be challenged, I guess. And, some people love to be challenged, and I think that's the thing,
Mm-hmm.
is like Jack and Farkle clearly both love to be challenged.
A little bit, yeah. And I think also with Eric, I think it's a little bit that he's like, I'm so mad at you and I hate you and you go, it's everything I stand for, but you're so hot and I hate
Yeah.
it.
Why do
He's
you have
like,
to look so good while you annoy me?
take off your stupid suit jacket. Yeah,
Roll up
exactly.
your sleeves. Show me your forearms.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Ah.
So then we get into this second performance, which is the teacher's argument from Fame. And I will
Mm,
say, this is one of my favorite performances in terms of character and narrative content. Because I
mm-hmm,
think while Fame, as we've discussed, is like a little weird, it's not the best musical, this idea for Jack and Eric is so perfect and it fits both of them so well and really gives
mm,
us a kind of not necessarily like in this text it's a little bit telling and not showing, but through the song, if you were just listening to the song, you'd get it. Like you get what their backgrounds are, you get where they're coming from and why they
mm-hmm,
both feel so strongly about this is important, no, this is important. And I think it's just a really interesting examination of their relationship from the start, combined with the
mm.
fact that it is also a thematic performance in terms of that realist versus dreamer thing. Like this is realist versus dreamer in a nutshell.
Definitely. Like, artists are people just like everyone else. They're not special just because they can sing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point. Eric also has a good point because academics shouldn't bar them from pursuing their dreams. But also, Jack, yeah, they're both right. They're both
Yeah.
right to some degree.
And that's I think what makes it an interesting argument as well, is that it's like no one's wrong. There's no clearly like you're the idiot and I'm right. It's just that they again, this whole thing is like they have to find the balance and they have not found the balance yet.
So true. They're gonna come to understand each other, and I'm just excited to get into that journey. Like, re-examine it.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
So yeah,
Yeah.
then we go to dinner at the Matthews house and it's uncomfortable because
Yeah.
Topanga's not talking to Corey and they're making their children witness that but not commenting on it. So like really nice, Corey and Topanga. But that gets a little brushed aside when AAA Confessions posts a new post, and Riley is temporarily relieved that it is not about her. But then we find out what it is a second later because Maya's scream is what
Also,
brings us into that.
my screaming is very emblematic of the Matthews apartment. So I love that pre-lap.
Yeah, so true. But as we come to see, it is that the thing that was posted is that the academic boot camp, someone took a photo of the students that were at academic boot camp and sent that, so now everybody knows who are the students who are on academic probation. And as you can imagine, Zay and Maya are freaked out about that.
Yeah, it's not a great look. But again, this is all Corey's fault. So
Yeah. They're like, oh my god, like now everyone's gonna know that we're academically challenged, everyone's gonna know we're stupid. And Angela's like, you're not stupid. Everyone learns at their own pace. And Maya has a line that I think is just a very Maya line. She says, yeah, okay, you can say that to Sunshine Matthews to make her feel better about her two left feet, but that does nothing for me. So I think it's just a very in character phrase for her to say.
yeah. Especially because she is so good at singing and dancing. Like I do believe she practices a lot, but I think there is this innate talent that she has. So having to put working for academics probably doesn't feel that good to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially because she doesn't care about it. Like she's willing to put
Yeah.
in extra work for the arts because that's her passion. But if
Mm.
she's not, we know this about her. If she's not interested in something, she's not interested, and you can't get her to change her mind on that front.
Is she an Aries?
Yes, she is.
Interesting.
How could you tell? Yeah, so I this brings us to our second mystery of the episode. Who do we think sent the academic boot camp post?
I mean, it could really be anyone at this point.
Yes.
Like, anyone could have hung around after school. We know it probably wasn't Riley, although if it was, like, you know what, girl? Yeah, get that attention off you.
Yeah,
Go
I
for it.
don't. Yeah, I don't think it was her. But I think it's interesting. I think maybe one might assume quickly on maybe it was Farkle if he found out his two biggest
Mm,
rivals were stuck in there. But the reason that I don't think it was him is
mm,
because of the fact that, all the weird stuff he has with Maya in this episode, I just think doesn't. It's not believable that he was the one that started
no,
it.
exactly.
And also, again, this is kind of the thing that undercuts every theory about him being it, is that he's so all over the place and like scatterbrains and like
Yeah.
so obsessed with himself that it's like he does not have time to be submitting shit about other people because he's like, me. I need to focus
Yeah,
on me.
he doesn't kind of snap into that taking everyone else down until the end of the season. At this
Right.
point, he's very much preoccupied in his head, thinking he is the best.
Or scared that he
I
will
would
be revealed to not be the best.
yes. Can I just say that Wyatt's line in this next scene is just so rude.
Yes. I
Hate that
literally
man.
wrote in my notes, I said, Wyatt, shut the fuck up. Like,
Just
my
go away.
God. I will say too, it's
Gus.
interesting that Angela, says to Maya and say she's like, "Here's how we're gonna handle it. Okay, we're gonna do what we should do when any professional would do if a scandal broke. We're gonna confront it head on and address it." And I think that the huge difference between her approach to that and later
Mm,
Valerie Delacruz's approach to that, which what does she do when she learns of scandals breaking? She tells Farkle, "Make a new scandal." Like, oh my
yeah,
god. The huge difference between this person is an okay educator and this person should never be an educator is so stark.
insane. I guess they just have to deal with it. And I do think we could come back to who posted it. Maybe it was Wyatt because maybe Wyatt thought because I believe he is not very bright. Maybe he thought maybe I do need academic boot camp, and he sort of went to
Huh.
like look, but then he saw who was in there, and he was like, I have a better idea.
That's interesting. I think it's also that if we're playing with that theory, that could be interesting too because I think I don't know when we talked about this, but I think we've talked about the fact that there is an implication, perhaps an interesting, totally unrelated to anything piece of lore that like Wyatt had a crush on Maya, and Maya
Oh,
obviously was not into that for many
mhm,
reasons, and so he was
yeah,
kind of resentful towards her because of that. So if he went to this boot camp thinking maybe I could get some help, I don't know, and he saw her in there knowing that she's like, fuck off, Wyatt, then maybe he's a little like, oh, well, I'm gonna get her back. Because that's what all of this stupid confessions page stuff is. It's just people being
Mm-hmm.
petty.
That sounds entirely correct.
There we go. We cracked
Okay,
the case. We cracked
we
it.
cracked it.
We unpacked it. But yeah, I think this is a really great example of, in this episode, this is a good rising stakes situation from the way it's
Mm.
laid out, where it's like, okay, first we introduce this plot that's like, oh, people need to be academically fixed, per se. And we're like, okay, they're kind of nervous about it, but here we go. We set up this thing for them. They're gonna fix it. And this is a perfect example of like rising action of like, oh, we're ratcheting up the stakes, where it's like suddenly everybody knows now. So now it's
Yeah.
a bigger drama piece. I just thought that was a good example of like, this is how stakes rise naturally versus whatever 102 was, where it was just who knows what's going on
Mm.
in any given moment.
It's interesting as well because it's not like you're just like, oh my gosh, drama. It's like it's kind of more, oh, that's interesting. Now we get to see a little bit of like
Mm-hmm.
who's tutoring who.
Yes. Which, speaking of, I wanted to say, I wrote down, I think it is, there's a lot of interesting pairing going on with tutoring here. And I think,
Mm.
with one exception, I'll just say this. So we have our two T's. We have Dylan, Maya, Zay, Dave, Haley. And we have our tutors as they come to be. I will just say, if, as we discuss further, if Yogi had volunteered to tutor Dave instead of
Mm-hmm.
Isadora,
Mm-hmm.
then I think we'd have a very complete set of
Mm-hmm.
something when it comes to the tutors and the tutees.
Definitely. And I don't know why Issa volunteers to tutor Dave because I can imagine she would be extremely impatient with Dave sometimes.
I think logistically the reason that she did is because we needed her to do something this episode, you know?
Mm.
So she
Yeah.
had to have some kind of inclusion in the role. But I also do think it is a little bit funny. It adds some humor, you know? Also,
Yeah.
Yogi's just not super very big of a character at this point. So I
Yeah.
think that just hadn't been developed yet. But if he had been, and if he had volunteered to tutor Dave, I think some parallelisms amidst all of the tutoring pairs
Mm.
would be
Yeah.
very obvious. So for, they're like, okay, we need people to tutor them. Can we have some volunteers? And Asher obviously is like, I'll tutor Dylan. And then he's like, love of my life. And Isadora's like, I don't even give a shit about that. I'll tutor Dave. So we get them out of the way, and Clarissa volunteers to tutor Haley.
Cute
Uh-huh.
besties.
Besties. And
Mm.
more, maybe.
Mm.
Um, so then we come to this moment of, they say, who's gonna tutor Zay? And Charlie's like, I'll do it. I will do it. I will do it. I will tutor
I
Zay.
volunteer as tribute.
Yes, he was ready. He was set. He did not wait. He did not hesitate. He said, I'll do it.
And that's kind of transparent, but
It is a little like, if anybody was paying attention, it's a little like, huh, that was weird. But no one's paying attention to Charlie ever. So no one cares.
lucky for
Um
him.
So yeah, Corey's like, well, Charlie, you can't do this because you also are representing AAA. And I literally wrote, he's representing AAA at some other event. There's a lot of schmoozing and showing off going on at these art schools. And I love the fact that I was just like, I don't care. They're doing shit. Stuff happens at the school. Just know that. But I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah.
Because we do that a lot too. Like, I mean, in every season, there's always something, like, oh, we have to do this week. Oh, we have to do this week. And so sometimes you just gotta be vague about it and not
Yeah.
trip over it. Well, I think it's interesting that, first of all, that Charlie is picked for something like that. Like, it's amazing that he is the person that's going to represent. Because
Yeah.
when do they ever pick Charlie? But I love the fact that he's like, I can do both. No, I'm good. I'm good. I can do it. I can do it. I can help another student. Wouldn't that be so great? That's a great way to be a representative. And Say is sitting there like, what the fuck is going on? Why is he so extra?
He's like, damn, this kid is really desperate for some community service points.
Yeah.
He really just wants to like be a charitable Christian
Charity case,
and
yeah. It even, it says that as they're debating about can Charlie tutor him, Say is like sitting there kind of miffed, like, why is I am not in dire need of this. Like, could we not act
mm,
like this is the biggest stakes ever? But to Charlie, it is the biggest stakes ever.
it's definitely a little like what's the word? Almost patronizing to Zay at this point because he is a hard worker.
Yeah. I think it's like, it feels patronizing in this moment because of the fact that it's like they're talking about him and he's sitting right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, if
it's
he
not
was
very
able
nice.
to participate in the conversation, it would feel maybe a little less like that. But because everybody is watching them have this discussion, which it's a little like, okay, Charlie, like you're being kind of ballsy, like being willing to have this
Mm.
conversation in front of everyone.
Like everyone knows, and then you just get so worried about it that you have to go and do what we know you do in future. Okay, you're like, you did this to yourself, buddy, but also, go for it, live your life.
He's got a lot going on. Then we get this great legacy ambition moment here of while Charlie is trying to get Sean and Corey to let him tutor Zay, Dave interrupts and he goes, Mr. Sean, is Charlie your son? Because the reason that this exists is for two reasons. The first one is that it is a bit of an allusion to Glee, because for those that have seen Glee, there was a joke about Rachel's boyfriend, annoying boyfriend Jesse, that he dressed a lot like Mr. Shu. And so in one episode, when he happened to be standing next to Mr. Shu, Brittany was like, Mr. Shu, is he your son? And it was like that same kind of moment. But the main reason we included it at all is because when Tanner was starting to kind of be up and coming and more people were knowing his face, like there were so many like think pieces, well, like, like low key pop culture think pieces and like photo comparisons of like, this kid looks exactly like Ryder Strong in the 90s. And so we just
Mm.
really wanted to like address that and be like, ha ha ha. Anyway. So that it was just so big that we were like, we should nod to it because people have talked about it so much.
Wow. Yeah, I think I only heard about that through you, but I still find it really funny because I just can't imagine. Like sometimes your teacher is someone's parent, like
Like
Corey.
Corey Matthews, yeah.
But other times it's like imagine your classmate just interrupting you and being like, wait, you guys look related.
So similar. So basically, that leaves Maya, and the only other person left to tutor her is Farkle.
Whoop whoop.
And they're both like, no freaking way. But then Sean's like, you will fail and drop out. So, okay, good for you. So Maya begrudgingly agrees, like, okay, whatever. And Farkle, to him, he's like, okay, well, at least I'm getting paid, and now you owe me. And Maya's like, I hate you. But to Riley, this is an interesting opportunity for her because she sees, like, oh, if Maya's going to be busy, I could maybe actually have an opportunity to do something. I could audition for this representative thing that Maya was supposed to do, and I could actually
Yes,
have attention on me for once. So she's really excited about that.
I love it. Go Riley. It's amazing. She's like actually having an ambition. She's taking, the opportunity where she can. I love it. So proud.
So then we go straight into these first tutoring sessions, and we have Dasher and Maya and Farkle at the library. Maya and Farkle argue and they can't do it, and so they end up arguing enough that they get kicked out of the library and given a detention. While meanwhile, in the background, Dylan and Asher, Dylan was not really paying attention and was just kind of flirting with Asher, and so after they see them get kicked out, Dylan's like, you thought I was bad? That could have been us. Aren't you happy? And Asher's like, please just complete the proof. We've been working on this for 40 minutes. To which I say, maybe Isadora should have volunteered to
Hmm.
tutor Dylan and Asher could have tutored Dave. I feel like that would
Yeah,
have been more effective because
definitely.
it's not that, like, because Asher does consistently over 4 years, like, help Dylan with school. But particularly at this phase of the relationship and also just generally, like, is it a great idea to have your boyfriend tutor you when you can't focus because it's your boyfriend? You know what I mean?
It's not a great decision. I can see why they made the decision because they want to hang out, but fact-wise, not the greatest.
Right.
The next little scene is great because we actually don't really see detentions very often.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, they have detention in the black box theater right there, which is great because it's cuter than a classroom for sure.
Yes.
But the funniest part is that Maya and Farkle are both there, and then Lucas is there, and Eric just says, "Don't break anything."
Yes, yes. So the assignment that Maya and Farkle are given is that they are going to, since they're being so difficult about it, they're going to write a letter to their parents to explain why they got detention. And then, yes, Lucas also happens to be here because I presume at this point he spends like every other lunch in detention
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So he's very definitely a regular. And yes, Eric says, Lucas, just don't break anything. And we introduce this little text thing we do where we just imply like the Lucas smile that he's like,
So cute.
okay.
He
Like
is.
he's got his evil little smirk. No
He's
words,
like,
just a
will
smirk.
I? You don't know. Maybe I will break something. Guess you'll have to come back and find out. And you know what? He is probably so happy to usually be in detention, like by himself or like with Nate or like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then this is
He's
like
like,
the
this is my
worst nightmare.
turf.
He's like, yes, detention. I finally get to like have peace and quiet. There's no performers guaranteed because they're all suck up. And then bam.
Yeah. But I do think one thing that I wanted to say about that is that, yes, I think part of it was just Eric being like, he's been here so many times, I do not need to give him a damn assignment. He won't do it. I don't care. But I think it is also interesting because of the assignment in particular, this idea of write a letter to your parents.
Mm,
He's not going to give Lucas that assignment, you know?
no,
I
true.
think it's really interesting.
Yeah. Also, kind of funny because it's almost like Eric is insinuating that Lucas shouldn't break Maya and Farkle.
Well, maybe that was needed. Maybe someone did need to say that. So yes, then we get into we're starting the Wicked motif really strong for Maya and Farkle. We had a little bit of it with Wizard and I, but this
hmm
is the first true like here's the Alphaba, here's the Glinda, here we go.
hmm
And I love Wicked, so I love whenever a song is included. I think it's very fun. I mean, they fit it so perfectly, their personalities, and Farkle is 100% our Alphaba of our show.
hmm
Um, but I think the most hilarious part of this beginning part here, when they're singing and taking over the detention, is that exact thing of Lucas not saying anything, but his expression being like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, even in detention, you can't shut up," and him like putting his head down on the desk and just being so over it.
Yeah, he just slams his head down, like, kill me now.
Yeah.
And that's why, he has to work really hard not to break them in that moment.
Right. Yeah, totally. So then as it unfolds, they are released from lunch detention, the song's still going. We get the rest of the classmates school into it, and I think it's very interesting. This shows you how bad Farkle's situation is right now, that
Mm,
Maya is the class favorite, that everyone seems to love her
hmm
and not like him. It's like, oh, Farkle, buddy, like you're in a really bad situation. Because as we know later, it's more like everyone kind of tolerates Maya by season 3, where they're like, we
hmm
need her, we can't like ignore her. Do I like her? But like here, it's like everybody's like, yeah, Team Maya.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Maybe they get sick of her antics a bit.
I definitely think they do. And I guess if you wanted to dig deeper too, you could think about this idea of like when Maya's lack of wealth is revealed, like maybe that lessens some of her power a little bit because
Mm,
people are bitches and they care about stuff like that.
yeah, especially at such an exclusive school. The next performance is about to start. It's happening. It's beautiful. It's Riley.
She's doing Over the Rainbow, which is, you know, a lovely song. No complaints, but maybe not.
Very inoffensive.
Yeah,
Nothing special.
where's the pizzazz? Where's the flavor? You know?
Flavor.
We have it, everybody's like, okay, this is great, it's very nice. You have, even in the technician's booth, Lucas is working the booth and he's like, okay, she's singing, she's pretty, but I'm gonna fall asleep because she's so boring.
I mean, super relatable. That boy needs more sleep. We know this.
True.
I personally fall asleep in the middle of the day all the time by accident, and so I can't fault him for that.
I was thinking though, it's kind of laughing to myself, Lucas going in his head, like, would she do something, could she do something interesting, it's like, buddy, you're gonna regret that because once she does do something, you're fucked. Like you're
Yeah,
stuck. You can't. You've ruined. You've dug your own grave, buddy.
you played yourself.
But yeah, I mean, it says like this is the kind of performance you get when you're constantly placating other people and stomping down your own emotions and just trying to please everybody. Like this is the kind of performance you get if you're trying to just be pleasing and not make a statement, not stand out, not do your own thing. So this is what you get.
Riley's journey from here is quite a lot because she goes from here to even next season to season 3, she's like, I don't care if I'm going to be offensive. So it's cool to see
Mm-hmm.
her like make that journey, but we're very much at the start of it right now.
Yes. We finish the audition. Angela checks in with Maya. Maya's like, I hate tutoring. I'm not gonna go anymore. And when Angela's like, you cannot do that. Your very presence here is at risk. Maya's like, well, you have Riley now, so you don't need me. Goodbye. Um,
Wow.
which just goes to show, like, Maya, you don't get one performance and you're like, you don't
Wow.
need me anymore. Like, you
Yeah.
can tell how much she cares in kind of a too intense way.
It's a bit, I mean, she's shooting herself in the foot there because she knows she's kind of bluffing, I guess, because she knows that Angela isn't going to like give up that easily, but she also doesn't want, she wouldn't let Riley take over her spot. So,
Yep. So then we have this nice little piano performance of the same song, kind of a thematic thread for the two of these. And
mm,
it's Farkle performing it on his own in his home. I like this performance because I really like seeing moments of Farkle's genuine love for music. I think
mm,
that it's something kind of unique to his character where, you know, he's one of the ones that kind of has a lot of interest in the arts, but I do
mhm,
think music is very, very at the core of that and just this appreciation for it. And we know that because he helps later with like putting together the set list and putting together a mashup, like he can work with music. Like he
mm,
has enough training in it that he can actually write things too. And I think that it's just this kind of, you know, if you have Maya as the truly the I'm here for pop stardom
mhm,
element, you have Zay as the dancer. I think that Farkle is that one in the middle, that it's a little more about music. It's like I love the aspect of the theatricality and the
mhm.
emotion of performing music. And I think you see that even just here when he's alone playing the piano. And I think it's ironic that his piano performance of Over the Rainbow is more emotional than Riley's.
Yeah, yeah, but that is the beauty of Mr. Farkle because he really is giving it his all, like every time. And Riley is still figuring out how to do that.
Right. But then we even see, you know, it was a little bit just from being the sanctuary of just him being there with his piano, because when his family comes in, he kind of turns it off and he shuts it down and he's like, okay, I'm gonna go be good academic, intellectual genius son now, rather than focusing on the arts because my family doesn't get that. And we get that sense that, you know, that's why Adams is so important to him, is because that's where the music is and that's
Mhm.
where he gets to explore that passion in a way that he does not get at home.
As usual, we are sad.
We are sad, we are tense, we are so many things. Okay, okay, here we go. Oh god,
It's
here we go.
happening. Let's do it.
It's
Let's go.
let's go. we're both we're both tingling, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
So now we are going into the first tutoring scene for Zay and Charlie. I just want to say again, it's one of those things where I wish we could just see it because I would love to see the beginning of this scene, just watching them actually do the tutoring
Mm-hmm.
of like can't you just imagine like the kind of nervous like but excited Charliness of like helping him with a problem and being like, no, that's good, like good job, and Zay being like, could you kill me, like
Okay.
like where Zay just like he doesn't care, he's like, I'm just gonna do this. But you can just if you could see the two of them in that scene together, like just see
Mm-hmm.
the total like I mean, just like we are tingling. Charlie is also tingling. Like he is
Yes.
so excited about to be sitting there telling Zay how to do his math homework. Like,
Every time Zay looks at him, he's like, damn,
yeah.
I'm alone with Zay right now. What a moment. What a
And that
life.
thing of like, it mentions in the writing, you know, that's like they're keeping it very professional, like very surface level, but you can see that Charlie wants to say more, and just like to see what that looks like of like starting to say something that no, never mind, I won't, but maybe no. It's just, ugh, I wish we could see it.
Then they finally talk, and Charlie manages to say something, and the first thing he says is just a really nice compliment to
Mm-hmm.
Zay. It's cool that Charlie just sees that. He's probably spent what, hours? How I don't know how long they've been doing this, but he already notices that Zay is super smart.
Mm-hmm.
And that is beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that yes, it's very cute that he's like, you're clearly smart. You don't need me. But I think I think it's really sweet though that even like they've only they were not really friends before this. Like I said, it was very peripheral. But the fact that this environment is at least chill enough
Mm,
that Zay tells him that he has dyslexia.
mm,
Like Charlie's like, "Oh, you know, you seem really smart. Like I don't think you even really need me. Like you're fine." And then he reveals the reason why he struggles so much, which is something that I don't think he would ever do with the divas. Like he would
No,
not. I mean, they find out later. Like by the time we get to season 2 and 3, it's like everybody knows. But at this point, when it's so protected, it's like the fact that he chose to share that with Charlie
yeah,
is
it's
just it.
big.
It says something, you know.
Yeah. And Charlie is the type of person where honesty and like getting to that deeper stuff is so important to him because of his personality. Like he
Mm-hmm.
really values that. He sees that as something much
Yeah,
more meaningful, like than just
than
having
most people
base
do. Yeah.
conversations. Yeah. So that that must, he was already buzzing, but now he is like buzzing.
Yeah. Again, the way that they kind of like have this understanding of each other just from their shared dance thing about how like Zay says, I have dyslexia, and Charlie's like, oh my god, I had no idea. And Zay's like, well, that's kind of the point. But that he goes on to even explain further, like, yeah, and it makes dancing harder because of the like way, directions and brains and blah blah blah. I'm not gonna explain it because I'm not a professional. But that
Mm,
this is a fact, it's a fact that it does make stuff like that more difficult
mm,
just because of the brain. I'm not a neurologist, but we did look this up. And so the fact that he's even willing to share that detail of it, that like the thing that I'm so passionate about, that I work so hard for, it is even harder because of this thing that I can't control.
mm.
And I think that also to Charlie is like, holy shit, like, wow,
This guy,
this
this
dude is
guy.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
This man is a god.
well, and that
Uh-huh.
kind of provokes, like, I think that, Charlie actually being willing to say what he wanted to say, which is, I really admire you.
Yeah, and then Zay immediately returns with perfect Prince Charming Charlie Gardner. Like Charlie probably like died in that moment. He's like, "Oh my God. That's just what Zay thinks." But he also called me perfect and charming, but also he was saying it in a mean way, but like it's a
I'll take
nice thing to say.
it.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think this is a really interesting scene too for like the way that Zay's initial surface impression of Charlie, like we get that both in the way he was reacting to Charlie being like, I'll tutor him, being like, oh my god,
hmm
like, am I a charity case? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But then also here being like, dude, you have everything. Like, I'm supposed to believe that like you admire me. Okay. Like he
Mm,
just has this perception that I think everybody does of like Charlie has everything, Charlie's set, Charlie's got all the girls, Charlie's got blah 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 blah. And Charlie's like, I'm dying inside.
He's like, "Trust me, I'm not pleased. I have other priorities."
Yeah, exactly. And I think I highlighted a line here for thematics, that the thing that Charlie
Mm,
says to Zay of it's more so just like you are so exactly who you are. I just mean
hmm
that you know who you are and the way that you just do things unapologetically because you want to. Like that whole thing, I think, is more of a thematic for Charlie as a character. That
mm,
like Eve
hmm
first episode where we're really actually getting him as a character because in episode 1 and episode 2 he was not really much of a character. We were just seeing him like exist in
Yeah.
the space, and this is the first scene where he's speaking as his own entity. And one of the
Yeah.
first lines that he's saying is kind of the I want statement. Like that will be so big in his character is that thing of you know who you are and you do things because you want to. And that is amazing to me because I can't do that.
Yeah. Screaming, crying, throwing up. So good. It's beautiful. Like he really looks up to Zay. He's admiring him, and then like Zay's like, "You have it all," but Charlie doesn't have that one thing that Zay does so well, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like so poetic.
And I think too, like one reason that I think this scene is so resonant is because of there's an exchange of like confidants in a way. Like Zay reveals that he has dyslexia. And then I think there's a return there where Charlie is revealing here he feels like he doesn't know how to be who he is. And
Yes.
I think that that's something he would not vocalize just like off the cuff, like, hey, everybody, I don't know who I am. But he's almost returning that favor of like, you were honest with me. Here's something I need to say, or need to share. So I
Yeah.
think that there's a really interesting, just even in that first scene, like initial, like, I will share a piece of myself with you that I don't share with anybody else.
Gosh, so romantic.
Then I also highlighted one of my favorite exchanges here. Wednesday asked, when was the last time you did something because you want to? Charlie said, I don't know. I don't go looking for trouble. Zay says, who taught you that having fun was trouble?
God told him that. No, just kidding.
Well, I mean, a little. So then Zay's like, no, okay, clearly you need to learn something from me. about how to be chill. So we're going to not study anymore and we're going to have some fun. And that leads us into the sixth performance of the episode, which is School and Life. This song, in terms of like, well, first of all, like, you know, shout out Queen Bee, woohoo. And totally a song that Zay would choose. I mean, totally believable. I think it's very interesting because of the lyrics, and I have them pulled up and highlighted, so I'll get into that in a second.
Ooh.
I think I just, again, I wish we could see like the way this performance unfolds of like, it really starts with Zay just being like, come on, like, let's just chill, let's vibe, let's dance. And the idea of like Zay like grooving and trying to get him into it, and Charlie just sitting there being like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Mhm.
Like, no, I can't. Oh my god, but he, oh my god. Like, he is probably going to explode, like, right now.
Like the way seeing Zay like almost reaching for him to pull him in, that boy is not well. Charlie is
Yeah.
unwell here.
I also think it's an interesting performance, too, in terms of, like, seeing an exploration of, like, Zay freestyle dancing versus, like, choreography. Like, we clearly
Mm.
know that they're good at choreography, you know, because they're the best dancers, and we've seen it with Pump It, and we've seen it with Dance on the Sidewalk. We get that, like, they can do dance,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's cool here to have, like, what does it more look like when it's more casual and more,
Mm-hmm.
like, loose and just, like, grooving, like, freestyling. So I think that that's a cool little difference thing than we've seen so far.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you say they're just kind of informally dancing, are you still picturing like hip hop or just more like very like non sort of moves per se, just sort of like boogieing?
I think more like that. Yeah, more just kind of like if you're dancing to music in your room, you know, like if you're just grooving, vibing
Yeah.
with a little more, just a slight more choreography to it because they are still dancers and also it's a TV show.
Yeah.
But like that kind of vibe.
Having the time of his life.
So yes, I just wanted to pull up quickly. I'd highlighted some lines in the lyrics for School and Life that I think that is what really elevates it for me as a really interesting performance, is because of the way there's some very kind of prophetic, relevant lyrics here,
Ooh,
buried in this very fun Beyonce song.
okay.
So there's a lyric set where it goes pretty early on. The age is irrelevant, so ignore that part. But she says, "This is for them 30 somethings that didn't turn out exactly how your mom and dad wanted you to be."
Mm,
So there's that. And then there's these two sets later in the verses where it says, "Mom and dad tried to hide the world, said the world's just too big for a little girl."
mm.
And then, "Mom and dad tried to hide the boys. I swear that just made them want me more."
Oh, snap.
So there's like a lot of that going on.
Yep.
And then there's in the, I guess it's like the pre-chorus, where it says, "I'm not a teacher, babe, but I can teach you something. Not a preacher, but we can
Mm.
pray if you wanna. And
Oh.
then ain't a doctor, but I can make you feel better."
I mean, these are all symbolic, and I think because there's like a lot of healing in this like friendship, there's a lot of like divinity and worship. It all
Mm-hmm.
connects.
And then I just wanted to also reference that at the end, there's like an outro in the song, and the
Mhm.
lyrics at the end of that are, "Just remember, stay relentless. Don't stop running until it's finished. It's up to you. The rest is unwritten."
The rest is still unwritten.
Yes, also an amazing song.
Oh.
But that, to me, I mean, I'll just let that speak for itself, you know?
Yeah. Okay. We'll just let that sit.
So then we go into Angela and Sean have a scene where Angela goes to Sean and she's basically like, "I'm really worried about Maya. You have dealt with people like this. You were a stubborn student yourself. What can I do?" And I think that this is an interesting scene solely for the fact that it's like, wow, they're not yelling at each other. Like, they're actually having an educator moment and like being helpful to each other. Maybe they disagree on a lot, and maybe their worlds of techie and performer are kind of at odds, but they both at least care to a degree about the students that they are in charge of.
Yeah, that's definitely something they can agree on.
So then Jack has pulled Maya into his office and is like, "Girl, if you do not fix your shit, you're gonna have to leave." And Maya's like, "Do not tell my mom about this, like she's gonna crush her." And Jack's like, "Look, you can fix this and we don't have to do any of this, but you have to take your academics seriously." And Maya is very upset about that. But basically, we get that the stakes are shit's getting real. And we
Um,
hear Eric talking about this with Corey, which Farkle also overhears. And while he was planning to go and be like, I will not tutor her anymore, I'm done, he overhears this conversation and he has a very surprising reaction to it where he's like, oh no, Maya's gonna have to leave? Oh, I better tutor her. Like, it's a totally, you'd think if it's
Mm-hmm.
stereotypical diva, it would be like, oh great, like my competition's gonna get kicked out. This is amazing. But Farkle was like, shit, I don't want her to leave. I gotta go help her, even though I don't like her. It's a very interesting look at his psyche as well, in terms of like, we can see just like how fucked up his understanding of relationships is.
Mm.
Where like, to him, it's like, this is, yeah, maybe he doesn't like Maya, and maybe he's like, we're rivals and we're enemies, but it's a relationship. It's something that he is sure of. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that's consistent. It's something that gives him attention. He
Yeah.
cannot risk losing that.
It gives him a purpose as well to beat her,
Mm-hmm.
to antagonize her, to taunt her.
To wait outside the dressing room until she's done to be mean to her.
Yeah, especially because he doesn't have friends. And I think, it's almost like the next closest thing is an enemy or a rival
Mm-hmm.
because you, in theory, know you should know if you are rivaling them. You should know things about them in a way that
Right.
being indifferent to someone is you maybe don't know that much about them.
Yep.
Mm.
So then we have Riley helping Topanga cook dinner, and she's like, I did this audition. And she says, what's going on with you and Dad? And Topanga says, don't talk about it.
What? Wow. It's so rude.
Yeah, and Riley just, we really see where that submissive,
Mm-hmm.
don't question things, don't talk about things, don't blah, 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 comes from.
It's just bad parenting. Straight up. Bad
Yeah.
parenting.
So then I highlighted this exchange between Dave and Isadora because I do think it is quite funny, and kind of to your point about she must have gotten so annoyed trying to tutor him,
Yeah.
because she's like, how do you not know this shit? And he's like, I don't know. They tell me where to go and I go there. It's amazing I got to school this morning. Sometimes you just gotta go with it. And Isadora says, did you stick a fork in the toaster when you were little or what? So, like, that's
I
mean,
mean,
but.
yeah. That's the thing is like it's a good thing that he is so chill because I can't imagine them making it through many tutoring sessions without her saying
Yeah.
something like that every 20 minutes.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, exactly. Dave is just like, it just goes over his head. He's like, I don't. Okay.
He's like, I did put a fork in the microwave once to see what would happen, or something like very basic and funny.
Dylan and Asher come by and they're like, did you all see the confessions page? Which is like, people, you all need to stop enabling this. But they are reacting to a post that was made about Zay and Charlie, where it was then when they were tutoring and they're sitting close together because they're tutoring and they're learning, but it implies vaguely that, like, oh, they seem pretty cozy. And I will say, I think that the reason that Dylan and Asher would find that interesting is because
Mm-hmm.
they've been talking about like, Charlie's definitely gay for like a year and a half. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they see that post, they're like, oh, maybe this is our proof.
They're connecting the dots, and everyone else is like, you're connecting nothing.
Right. Like, they go to the other techies, they're like, guys, look. And the other techies are like, what do we care about this? Like, I don't get it. What are you so excited about? No, they're gonna have to wait for their gay
Yeah.
mentorship
Oh, yeah.
period of time. But so yeah, everyone else is like, I don't give a shit about this. Why do I care? Someone does give a crap about this, and that is Charlie himself. He is very frazzled about this. Like we said, he's not well, and he is especially not well now. And he is very uncomfortable when Zay appears and shows off his wonderful B minus. So good job, Zay. Good job on
Woo.
improving your academics. He says, I think I deserve an A for effort, but no use fighting the system. And then Charlie says, haha, yeah.
Wow, Charlie.
That is the introduction of the quintessential Charlie haha.
Ha ha.
If you hear Charlie go haha, it means he's not laughing and he's dying inside, as we will see many, 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 many times to come.
The thing is that Charlie really, he's so uncomfortable, but he's like, he really played himself. Like, he was the one who was like, I have to tutor Zay. It's like, bro, if you wanted to keep this under wraps, like, you're doing a bad job of it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is,
He's in battle
he
with
is at
himself.
war with
Mm-hmm.
himself. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And he lost the battle, and now he's gonna pay for that. this moment is really interesting too because I think, you know, Charlie is then, again, not at all personal to Zay, but he's so dismissive and it's just like, oh, I gotta go to class, bye. You know, Zay does not understand that that's where he's coming from. He has no sense of what his behind the scenes is like at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's just unfortunate that, you know, Zay probably feels, you know, really bummed about the fact that it's like they had, like we talked about, like they had this very kind of deep tutoring session of like, let me share this thing about me with you because I feel comfortable. And it's like, okay, we shared that and now he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. So I think it's partially confusion being like, what the heck is wrong with him? Why are we acting like this? And then also just this hurt of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I told him that I have dyslexia and now he's being weird. Guess that's all I have to take away from this.
Aw, so sad. Again, we are sad, as usual.
But yeah, I think that this is also, I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I think this is the moment where now Charlie is going to be operating a little more intentionally about the things
Yeah.
he chooses to do and the
Mm-hmm.
people he's choosing to be seen with.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting a little more calculating.
Which is unusual for him because he generally operates in a state of confusion.
Confusion, hysteria, not thinking about what he's doing. But I think we're basically about to start entering like Charlie panic mode.
Yeah, poor baby.
Then we come back to Farkle and Maya, and Farkle has invited her to come tutor, and he's waiting for her, trying to, again, another cute little moment of Farkle and his love for music. He's just trying to sound out a song on the piano by
Mm.
ear, just for fun. And Maya provides him with the right note when she comes and she says, no, no, the one you did before, hit that one again. So it's like there's a little wavelength going on
Mm.
between them, and that launches them into a very impromptu performance of Don't Stop Me Now, which is the seventh song of the episode.
Great song.
It is a great song. It is just a bop. It's a classic. And I think it's nice to see Maya and Farkle perform very loose, like not about performance, but just like having fun with music.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing. It's nice.
Again, it's spelling out that they're not so different after all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Temporary truce. We love it.
Yes. The bad side of that temporary truce is that it fixes Maya's grades. So when Riley comes to see, did she get the opportunity from her audition? No, she comes to learn that because Maya fixed her grades, Maya's gonna do it anyway. So you really didn't need to audition at all, Riley. Sorry.
Aw.
And that is understandably irritating
Mm.
because the politics of high school theater in any school, but I'm sure even worse at Adams, is like favoritism is a thing and favoritism is some bullshit.
Oh yeah. It is very clear. We all saw it. I think it's it's probably quite natural because you do just have vibes with some people. But in this case, I think it's just so much worse because this isn't just like the school production. This isn't just like Maya always getting the lead in the school production. This is everything.
Yeah, Angela very clearly has her favorites, and that's going to cause some beef. Riley has been
Dispatched.
kind of jilted, yeah, and that launches her into truly emoting in a performance, and that brings us to the last performance of the episode, Rose's turn. This is a fan favorite. I have been told by a lot of people over the last 3 years that this is either one of their favorite performances or their favorite performance.
Mm.
Which I think is pretty impressive, pretty cool. Good for Riley.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to just see her actually emote, you know?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And especially after the rest of the episode, like she started off crying and then she was like, okay, nope, no more emotion. I'm gonna like do stuff. And she tried and she just didn't get it. And so it's nice to see her like she is learning to use that emotion that she had at the start of the episode to channel into a performance. It's like she had the emotion and she had the singing, and now she's added them together to create this beautiful performance.
Exactly. So she takes it from the hallway to the stage and she thinks she's alone in the auditorium. She's really letting it loose and great performance, but she is not alone in the auditorium. Because who is around?
Who is always around?
Lucas James Fryer.
He's always
is
there.
always around. Yes. We see him. I can see this so clearly in my head. Again, I wish I could plug you all into my brain. This moment of like when we see her singing and she's really into it, and then we're in the booth and he just like pops up
Mm-hmm.
and is like so confused. He's like, what? Who's singing? That does not sound like Maya Hart. What's going on? And he kind of like, comes to look through the window with intrigue.
Mm.
And I think when he sees it's her, he kind of like, raises his eyebrows and he's like, okay, huh.
Yeah.
And he listens and he enjoys the performance. And then we see him like walk away because we know as we come to the end of the performance here, Riley finishes it. She's like, whew, that was cathartic. And then he starts clapping.
It's just it's a big moment because it's actually huge for him to like by saying this, by clapping, like he's acknowledging. It's okay, it's kind of sarcastic a little bit. Yeah, it is
Yes.
sarcastic. But at
A
the
little
same
bit.
time, it's not. He doesn't
Yeah.
even clap sarcastically for the others.
Yeah. And I think as you kind of said, like he is acknowledging it. And I think that that's a big part of it too, is he is choosing, through doing this slightly sarcastic applause, he's choosing to reveal himself, like to come down and have a conversation with her,
Hmm.
which I think for everybody else, he would have just stayed in the booth, Like he
Yeah.
would not have been like, I think I want to go have a conversation.
Yeah. Interesting. Also just really funny how he's like, brah, hop, vote. Like,
Yeah.
Lucas,
That's one
you
of
are
my
a performer. Like, come on.
Yeah, he is so dramatic. I think he is one of the most dramatic characters in the whole show,
Yeah.
ironically. Yes, I love this little moment where he goes, bravo. And then she's like, are you like always up there or what? Like she's so embarrassed and like defensive. But another layer to this is when this episode first came out, our beta div was reading it and she got to this part and she read it and she was like, I imagine that because Lucas does this very theatrical pause when he's hopping down the steps. He goes, bravo, but he cuts it up.
Mm.
And when he first does bra, like Div was like, I imagine Riley for a split second is like, oh my god, is my bra showing? Like, oh my god, shit. But no, he's just being a dick.
It's so good. And the way he just ignores her question, he's like, mm-hmm. So I'm just like on my dramatic like
Yeah.
stuff right here. You did it. Like, and the fact that he's like, yeah, actually like I approve. And it's like you've impressed me. And clearly he is the one she needs to impress. Not Angela, the teacher. No,
Mm-hmm.
not Maya.
Obviously.
No, it's obviously Lucas who hates singing, which is actually kind of true because if you get Lucas to pay attention, that is a bigger achievement. But
It is. Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's true. There's this line here that he has. It's the last line of the episode. And again, I highlighted it in the purple for thematics.
Mm.
He says, whoever it was that was singing there just now, that sounds like the real you. That sounds like someone worth knowing. And I think
Mm.
some interesting layers to that. Again,
Yeah.
it's a little shitty for you to be like, that's someone worth knowing and the rest of you
Yeah.
isn't.
It's like,
But I think
okay.
right, like I think it kind of plays into like, we talk about how Lucas is eloquent, but I think he also is not. And as we know, he struggles to articulate himself. And I think that that was kind of an example of that, of this moment of like, I think I know what I want to say, but
Mm-hmm.
it comes out completely wrong, but right, but also wrong.
Oh, yes.
It is not exactly what he meant to say, but it sounded cool. So,
He's probably so shocked that he said that. Like, he probably thinks about that for the rest of the week and decides to say nothing for the rest of the week just because he
yeah.
said that. He's like, oh no, what did I do? Why did I do that?
I also think that I wanted to highlight there's this visual of them, the way that they're standing, where it's like Riley's on the stage and
Mm,
he's down below it, kind of
mm,
like looking up at her. That is a visual that we will come back to because it kind of gets thematically repeated
mm.
with RL and with Lucas specifically in different contexts. So keep that in mind. Put that in your
Mm.
little brain bank.
Can I just say again about that line as well is it kind of takes back to what Charlie was saying about Zay being himself and that
Mm-hmm.
he admires him for that and that he knows what he wants and Lucas has no idea that that happened, but for some reason he also is basically saying that. He's like, this is the kind of person I admire, someone who's being real. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting little parallel.
So yeah, that is like the last sentiment. Lucas says that he walks away like a cool kid, and then Riley's contemplating that like, okay, I did this and it didn't go terribly, and somebody who's very hard to please didn't hate it. Maybe this is who I gotta be. Maybe it's not enough to just keep up. Maybe I gotta put myself out there. I gotta make bold choices.
Hmm.
And it says, maybe this is the moment where things really start to change.
And it's true.
And I wrote, maybe this is the moment stuff actually gets good, unlike 102.
I mean, yeah, this is the episode where it starts to like kind of make its progress, and I really enjoyed the next couple of episodes. So, it
Mm-hmm.
does actually change a bit.
Yes, I think this is truly where the show kicks off, where it really finds its voice, its kind of initial vibes. Now we've made it to the end of the episode, so we're kind of
Ooh,
talking in conclusion. I will say for me, this is such a good music episode for
yes,
me. I love so many of the performances in this
yes.
episode, and that's why I feel like such a standout compared to the last two,
Mm,
because they're just so good. Like either if it's because of characters and narratives, or because it's like just really good songs, or if it's like, something like School and Life where the lyrics are so relevant.
mm.
Like I think that this music, that is the highlight of this episode for me, aside from the fact that it's like stuff's actually happening and we're actually getting to see the characters, is that the music choices were really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even though I do believe Rose's turn is my favorite, the overall level of this episode is very high, even if it does have a song from Fame in it.
Poor Fame. Would you say like is Rose's turn one of your favorites ever? Is it the favorite of this episode? Is it, where does it place for you on the grander scheme of things?
It's definitely it holds a lot. I hold a lot of affection for it, I'd say. I'm fond of it, but it wouldn't be like a standout. But in this episode, it is my favorite.
Nice, very nice. I would say my favorite performance from this episode is tough. I have to like go back and like what was even in this episode? So much. My tie would probably be between Teacher's Argument or What Is This Feeling?
Mm,
Because both of them are so apt to the characters
mhm.
involved. That just felt like a really good fit.
Yeah, I do really like
So,
how with Teacher's Argument, like you can kind of visualize the whole thing. Because
mm-hmm.
obviously you hadn't got super into describing the performances a lot at this point. So I think that is something that stands out about Teacher's Argument is the description of it, which
Mm-hmm.
always adds a lot, you know?
Absolutely. And slowly, those will start to get a little more attention. So yeah, is there anything else? Any other standout scenes, characters, dynamics?
Well, I think we know the standout dynamic. Um, Actually, it's a really good one for dynamics, I guess, because it's like a pairing episode, which you do again and again.
Yes.
You give them those opportunities to be in their pairs and be in different pairs and see what happens. But it is really good to get this start of this kind of friendship with Charlie and Zay, and then this sort of weird dabbling of Lucas and Riley continues to use Riley's word.
Some attention is being given.
Yeah. And then also just that's kind of start of the deeper side of Maya and Farkle as well. They all sort of make a lot of progress. Even with Teacher's Argument, there's like that Jack and Eric
We're
kind of,
digging deeper into, yeah,
yeah.
their situation.
It's almost like that Teacher's Argument is it's a little bit of a step forward for them because it's not just like some bantery sort of throwaway comments. It's like they're arguing, they're like kind of having it out, and that's helping them to see each other's perspectives more, and that will help in the long run.
So true. Well, we made it to another episode. We made it through.
Did.
What say you, Maddie? Anything else?
I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of our podcast. Do you say pod or podcast?
Say
Why is it
whatever your
even
heart
called that?
desires.
But I hope everyone enjoyed this pod. I enjoyed making it. As usual, me and Maggie, we would just do this even if no one listened. So it is nice to know that some people do actually
True.
listen.
So true. Heck yeah.
Heck
So,
yeah.
as always, if you want to reach us, you can find us on the Instagram at the Ambition Source. You can find us on Tumblr at Ambition Source, and soon, someday, our blog, hopefully within the season 1 of our recaps. I'm working on it. And you can always send questions about any episode coming up or that's already passed, and we'll address it. Otherwise, have a great February, and welcome to Adams. This is it.